Hello and welcome to my review of Project Eden's Garden, the Danganronpa fan game that's been anticipated for about a year now. So, starting off with some bad news, I did record the entire prologue that just came out earlier today. Solid 3.5 hours. Me and my friend Will were voicing over the characters, having a good time talking about the game. Turns out OBS did not record the 3 hours after the first 30 minutes, so I only have about 30 minutes of footage or so. But I'm just going to play that in the background, play the OST that's on YouTube, and just kind of talk about the game and what I thought about it. Alright, so starting off, when we first boot into the game, first of all, the visual of just how everything looks, the crispness of, I don't know, it's weird to say the text or just the decals and stuff, is honestly amazing. Like, I played other fan-made Danganronpa projects, and they look good. I think they were made on like RPG Makers, the ones I played, but this looks like it was made by like an actual studio. And what's crazy, this is free to play. Like, you don't have to pay for this at all, which means like the developers, I don't know if they're getting paid maybe by like inside sources or if this is just like a passion project. But the fact that this looks as good as it does is honestly stunning. So next thing I want to talk about is the introduction to the main character, Damon Matsu. So we learned Damon Matsu, he's the ultimate debater. You kind of set yourself up for the game of he's always going to be really good in class trials, arguments, that kind of stuff. But what I really like about Damon, and we learned this pretty early on, as early as the train scene, is that he's a little bit maybe full of himself, or I don't know what the right word is. He thinks he's a little bit better than everybody else, and I think that's a really good departure from the first three games in the series, where we have Makoto, Hajime, and Kaede, who are all super nice, hopeful. Well, Hajime not so much, but it's kind of cool just to have this person who maybe isn't a team player necessarily. He kind of looks out for himself, that kind of thing. And I'll save the spoilery stuff for the end, but there's a little bit of a scene towards the end of the prologue that kind of represents that a little bit better. But I'm excited to see kind of what his arc might be if he has one, and where his character can develop. And another thing we see right away, pretty much right as we meet Damon, is the voice acting. So the first couple of fan-made Danganronpa games I've played had no voice acting at all. It was just kind of reading text. But like I said, the quality of this project is absolutely outstanding, and they could have voice actors for every single character in it. And I don't think there was a single voice that I was like, they're not doing a great job. Everybody seemed to fit almost perfectly. Like every line, whatever. So when me and my friend played this in the lost footage, we did, do our voiceovers for certain lines because they can't voice every line. But when we got to hear the actual characters' voices, it's like, damn, this is like actual studio quality. It's amazing. And just to think that like this is only a prologue, we still got 5-6 more chapters of the game. And also, like I said, it was free. We didn't have to pay for this at all. And then getting to the characters themselves, it's going to sound kind of weird, but it's very similar vibes to like V3, where I think Danganronpa V3 has the best characters in the series in terms of like individual arcs or how they interact with each other and whatnot. Each character feels like, they are a person, they have their own story, backstory, that kind of stuff. Like, you want to learn more about them. And honestly, like, for even the characters like that I don't like obviously there's some you're not supposed to like, but even the characters like I personally maybe am not the biggest fan of, I do want to see where they go and kind of what their art could be. And then jumping back into the art style a little bit, I did reference in terms of like character development V3, in terms of like character design, we're also looking very similar to V3 in terms of, like I said, how the characters are looking, but also just the UI and how the actual game feels. It's got a nice crispness that V3 has. When your character's talking with somebody else, they appear in the bottom right. I just think that's a really nice touch. It was a feature I very much liked. Additionally, this is something that's a little bit new for Danganronpa. In the mainline games, the prologue was just kind of to set up the idea of what the game was. So, hey, a bunch of high schoolers trapped inside a place, you gotta kill each other to get out, that was it. What I really like about Project Eden's Garden, and what it does, especially in the prologue, is that there's essentially a murder you have to solve right away. So, it's not any classmate you would know. It's supposed to be a case from like several years back or some kind of arbitrary date, but the whole thing is based on, hey, this is the story, a perfect recreation of this murder, so now you have to solve it. And everyone's like, okay, this is kind of weird, we don't know why we're doing this, but we were told to. So they start doing it, and then it throws you right into a trial in the prologue, which is something, honestly, I really like. I think a tutorial trial is a brilliant idea, especially in these kind of games where you have to think and kind of understand how the mechanics and how to think about certain problems works. And getting to the trial, there is a new feature in it. It's very similar to a V3 feature. V3 had a feature where you could lie to get further debates, and there were certain things you could do where you could lie in places you didn't need to, and you would unlock like additional dialogue. So Project Eden's Garden has a similar thing. I think it's called Pathos, where basically instead of agreeing or refuting an argument with logic, you could choose to do it with emotion too, and this unlocks, like similar to V3, additional dialogue. And I just think that's a really cool feature. That was something I really liked about V3, and I'm glad to see it brought back in kind of a new way. So as we close towards the end of the prologue, I've probably already said a couple light spoilers, but I will put up a small spoiler warning here. We learned that throughout the game we've kind of had this disembodied voice telling us what to do, told us about the murder that we have to solve, that kind of stuff, and he led us to the class trial grounds. So at the end of the trial, where we figure out kind of what happened with it, he comes out and introduces himself as Tozu. And Tozu's kind of like this man in like a ram costume, kind of like a weird like religious sense, that kind of things, and introduces himself as the guy who runs the killing game. And I have to say, out of all the voice actors, I think Tozu is by far my favorite. Just the way he carries himself and the cadence in his voice it sounds like he put a lot of work into that, and I really appreciate it. So another thing that happens near the end is the ultimate golfer, Grace Madison, just when Tozu appears, decides to, hey, let's go beat the shit out of him. Maybe that'll fix it. So she starts beating the shit out of him. All of a sudden, a red dot appears on her forehead, and we hear a gunshot, and it's like, oh shit, it's the prologue. Did somebody already die? First we had, a murder we had to solve, albeit fake, and then a trial. Kind of like, holy shit, they would really do that in a prologue? And then it turns out Grace was just graced by the bullet, and Tozu has a conspirator named Mara, who I guess is considered the executioner in this case. So it's kind of a show of like, hey, if you do not participate in this killing game that I'm running, Mara will come in and take care of you. And I think it's kind of like, obviously in this game there's an overlying threat at all times, because hey, you're forced to murder each other. But I think it's cool to have like a physical presence of that as well. Like we had Monokuma before, but he was just kind of a funny little guy. No, this is just straight up a girl with a gun and a panther mask. So, and one last thing I wanted to throw in there that I actually forgot to record is near the end of it, Tozu, the Mastermind, is saying like, oh, you'll all end up killing each other basically no matter what. There's no way around it. And, all the students, they start speaking against him like, we'll never do that. We're ultimates, whatever. And Ava, the ultimate liar, who's kind of been with us since the start of the game, at least the prologue, kind of speaks out. It's like, what are you saying? Of course we're going to. Like, we're ultimates. Like, we all are like self-centered. Like, we do anything to better ourselves. That's kind of our reason for being ultimates. Everybody looks at us, and everybody kind of starts talking bad on her. Like, you don't know what you're talking about, whatever. And then the main character, Damon, speaks up, and he's like, no, she's right. Like, any of us would do anything to get ahead. Like, that is why we're ultimates. So it's wrong to trust each other this much when we don't know exactly how far others are willing to go to perfect themselves or master their craft or something like that. And so that's right when the prologue ends, and I think that leads to a really interesting dynamic that we haven't had in a Danganronpa game. Is you're going into it with basically everybody against you. Makoto, he already made a couple friends. Hajime made a couple of friends. Kaede made a couple of friends going into the first chapter. But Damon has nobody to start with. People are against him. He's kind of shown that he's a little selfish, and I think that's going to be a really interesting dynamic. One more thing I want to talk about is actually the music. So when I lost all of the video files for this, I lost, honestly, all of the audio as well. I lost my voice, the game's music, that kind of stuff. So that's what I'm playing in the background right now is the Eden's Gardens OST, which they actually have posted on YouTube. It's fantastic. We got some remixes of classic Danganronpa songs, we got some originals. It's all fantastic, and as Will and I were playing through the game, we kept commenting on like, holy shit, this is amazing. So I'd like to reiterate, this was a free project. Like, I didn't have to pay for this, and honestly, I think this is better than most games I do pay for, and this was only a prologue. Danganronpa games traditionally have, a prologue, 6 chapters, and an epilogue, so we have potentially 7 more things that can come out, and they are releasing this episodically just because it is, it's a small team, it's unpaid, so it's not like they're rushing to do anything. But I think that actually works out to their benefit, because that means they can put time and effort into it to make the game they really want to make, and kind of don't have to cut or make any shortcuts. So I'm going to go ahead and leave the link to the YouTube page and the download page in the description if you wanted to try it out for yourself. I'm sad I wasn't able to upload the full version with me and Will voice acting and kind of going through it for first impressions, but I think this is a fantastic project. I've been waiting for this for, I think, about a year now is when it was announced, and even then it blew me away. And now that we got the full release of at least the prologue, it looks fantastic, it felt fantastic, the story is great so far, it's got some great hooks, great characters, fantastic music, and I'm just really excited to see where it goes next. So thank you, Project Eden's Garden team, and I'm really excited to see Chapter 1 in the future.